Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 43 of the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. Jeremy Palmer, Clark Palmer here with you. It's Sunday, about 6 p.m. Eastern. So, had a, interesting, well, I wouldn't say interesting. Just kind of we're in that part of the sports calendar that's pretty bland. I did watch the British Open. This British Open was pretty interesting this morning. Came down to the last couple holes, and that was...
I saw the guy who won was 20 under par.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was kind of interesting. You could score on that course, but it's also like, because it's St. Andrews, there's also places where you can literally fuck your whole round up. Like if you hit into one of those bunkers that's like a hole, like you forget it. You know, so
yeah.
And also, so it's difficult, and the greens are not easy. You know, they're undulating all over the place. You can make putts, but it's not like it's easy. And so
right.
that was fun to watch. But
yeah.
And
I watched, you know what, real quick, I watched American Underdog Story.
Oh, about Kurt Warner.
Kurt Warner. Yeah. Yeah, you know. It's kind of cheesy. I mean, there was some football in it. A lot of it was about his relationship with his wife, which was nice. You know, it seems like Kurt Warner's, a decent guy. But, it was kind of like Zachary Levi played Kurt Warner, and like, he was definitely tall enough and he was built enough to look like an NFL quarterback. But like, I don't know. Sometimes when he was throwing, like I don't know. It looked a little, I mean, I'm trying to remember what Kurt Warner looked like throwing, and it just, I don't know, this guy didn't really, I don't know, it could have been better, but it wasn't too bad,
Yeah, that's cool. I watched, I brought this up on here before, I think, but The Offer on Paramount Plus was really good.
Right.
About the making of The Godfather, and I think it got nominated for some Emmys. And
okay.
Yeah, so it was really, really well done. If you got anybody looking for a good TV show, it's again it's not going to go down as one of the greatest TV shows of all time, but as an entertainment product for 10 episodes, really good.
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of sports news this week, but the one thing that did happen was DeAndre Ayton for the Phoenix Suns. He signed it was kind of strange. He had not been signed by anybody up to this point. He's a restricted free agent. So he signed an offer sheet with the Indiana Pacers. So it was kind of interesting news. 4 years, $133 million. And so then it was kind of like,
everyone was assuming that Phoenix wasn't going to sign him because they'd been trying to work on an extension and it didn't happen. And then there was just a feeling that, from what everyone was reporting, there was just a feeling he's going to be gone. They'll sign and trade him somewhere. So it was that's what we were expecting.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised Phoenix couldn't work out some kind of deal to get something back for him, but they ended up and it was funny, like it came out like in the afternoon. Well, he signed an offer sheet. I mean, was it 4 hours later? It was already like they had already matched it. Like they didn't even wait.
Yeah.
Like you have 48 hours to kind of wait, till it's finalized, and they just, no, we're going to match it right now. So it's just kind of like, I'm not sure what Phoenix is doing. Number one, like it hard.
Maybe they saved themselves a little bit of money, but it's like, okay, you guys just torpedoed your relationship with the player. Now you're signing him. Like, I don't understand what you're doing.
Yeah, he it's very strange. They couldn't work out the extension last season before last season started anyway. And then he kind of left in the playoffs, and they kind of benched him in the second half of that game, which, I mean, they were getting blown out, so it didn't really matter. But so now it's like, all right, so they didn't want to lose him for nothing, so they decided to keep him. I mean, basically it's just an extra, they could have offered him 5 years instead of 4. That's really the only difference in the deal that they, so it's just kind of like, I'm not sure what Phoenix is doing, because, and now they can't trade him until after January 15th, and DeAndre Ayton can veto any trade for the next year. So it's likely now that Kevin Durant's not going to the Phoenix Suns, which is a That's kind of that's the bigger storyline here. And so, I know a lot of the TV shows are saying, well, the Heat can't make a very good offer, blah, blah, blah. And, my argument to that is, well, the Heat don't have to have the Heat don't have to have an unbelievable offer. They just have to have the best offer. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of funny. And also, the Donovan Mitchell rumors are heating up with the Knicks. So as being Heat fans, I would just say, honestly, I think Miami actually has a better chance to sign Durant or to trade for Durant than they do Mitchell, because Durant has a say in what team he goes to. I think there's 5, 6, 8 teams that they could trade Donovan Mitchell to, and I think it would work. So as strange as that is, because there are just teams can offer better packages. The Knicks have more draft picks than the Heat do, and that seems like what Utah would be looking for. So
yeah, there was something else I was gonna mention. I'm completely drawing a blank on what it was. Keep going. Yeah, maybe I'll think of it. Something related to that. I mean, it was like Phoenix. We don't think they're a title contender next year because they have to. Chris Paul's still one of their best players. So even with or without DeAndre Ayton, we didn't think they were a title contender.
I don't agree. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think they're definitely a contender.
Oh, you know what? I'm sorry. They're a contender. Do I think they're going to win? No.
Right.
Right. That's kind of what I would say. That's right. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean they're still really good. You never know. You never know what can happen in an NBA season, but they're good enough to be in the conversation. But this might be, does this become a problem during the season that DeAndre Ayton is like not thrilled with the way this was handled? Okay, yeah, he got paid, so maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe he'll just come in and, all right, I'm going to work my butt off, and maybe it won't matter. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they say winning heals everything. So, I mean, and I would think that they'll have a pretty good regular season, barring injury.
Right.
So,
yeah. So, something you texted me about earlier this week, and you said, "All right, Nick Saban's got the worst take of the week," and I was like, well, I wonder what this is. And so basically, Nick Saban was on. I don't know why he's so interviewed recently. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it's kind of odd.
He's going on all these podcasts and basically complaining about the system in college football. Like famously, a few months ago, he went on it was some kind of town hall type thing, and he complained about Texas A&M. Well, they buy all their players, and this isn't fair, and blah blah blah. And Texas A&M, Jimbo Fisher from Texas A&M came out and said he's a hypocrite. This is ridiculous, and it became a huge story. And I'm sure that Nick Saban did not mean to turn that into a huge deal. So I guess he went on a different podcast, a few days ago, and said, it's all about competitive balance. I mean, everything we do in college football is, trying to create competitive balance. And it was really funny. So on Colin Cowherd's show, he airs that clip, and I mean, he comes back
to him and he's laughing.
He's covering his mouth, laughing his butt off. Can't believe he said that. Oh, competitive balance. Oh, really? And then he put up Alabama's schedule next year, and it's got, Louisiana Monroe and Austin Peay and Vanderbilt, and, before their 2 big games against LSU and Auburn, they have a bye week before. So it's just like he's completely cooked his schedule. So it's like, all right, why don't you go play it? Why don't you go play an out-of-conference team on the road? Like, how about that? How about just do that before we start talking about competitive balance? So,
well, I mean, the idea that everything they're doing has been about competitive balance. It's been about making money.
Right.
I mean, more or less. I mean, you could argue about some of the different things, but I mean, it's literally been about making money. And the NIL thing, that wasn't a NCAA rule change. That was the Supreme Court saying you have to let them do this.
Right.
So that wasn't really I mean, it was just, like I said, worst take of the week. I mean, worst take of the year, worst take of the decade. it's got to be in the running. I mean, because that was so just blatantly like how far up your own ass do you have to be to make a statement like that when you're Nick Saban? It's like what the hell are you doing?
Yeah, he literally thinks, our team's not that good. Our team's okay. We're not great. Meanwhile, they've won half the championships in the last 15 years, and the SEC's won 75% of them.
Because Nick Saban is a competitive. He's a psychotically competitive maniac. I mean, that's essentially what it is. I mean, he's so like it's the same thing with like Urban Meyer. Like when he was the coach of the Jaguars, he couldn't deal with losing preseason games. It's like, dude, can you shut it off? And he's like, no, he can't. He can't shut it off. So.
Yeah, it was.
That's how they kind of approach every issue.
Yeah, it's just complete nonsense from Nick Saban. The people are, there's going to be challenges that he's going to have to deal with now because the state of Texas has more money, and some of these other schools have access to more money, and so Alabama's might have some more competition, which we'll see if they have more competition or not. It doesn't.
Yeah,
that hasn't been the case up to this point, so we'll see if that changes anything.
Well, because there's other schools that have a lot of money. Having the money isn't the thing. You got to know what the hell you're doing with it. You got to know how to coach. You got to know how to recruit. You got to have the right people there. Like, there's a whole bunch of things. It's not just having having enough money, And the other thing I wanted, with Nick Saban, it's basically whenever something happens that is out of his control, he completely loses his shit.
Right.
That's basically what we've seen from him when since he's been in Alabama, or since he's just been a college head coach. Anything that's out of his control, he can't stand it because he's an absolute control freak. So, and it's college sports is set up that way for a coach to have that level of control. And so this kind of stuff happens, and he can't control it, and he's pissed off.
Yeah, there's no part of college. First of all, college football is not about competitive balance. I would compare college football to European soccer. Like, we know who the good teams are, and they're the same every single year. College football is not set up to be balanced. There's no thing, like in pro sports, we have things like salary caps and revenue sharing and, balanced schedules and, things that are put in place to create competitive balance. Alabama gets to schedule whoever the hell they want for the most part. So they always have a game in November where they're playing – a Division I AA team or some team they're going to beat by 50 so they can, keep their team ready to go. Like, boy, if they had to play, if all the best teams from the 5 conferences all had to play the champs from the other conferences, boy, we'd have a different discussion then. So, yeah, for him to it's a bunch of bullshit from Nick Saban. No, I want competitive balance and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, No,
you don't. You don't want to lose. Right. You don't want to be like, why else are you scheduling these BS out of conference games? Why is it that, because the SEC is so big, they can't play every single team, but it's like, why is it that only certain years do you play Georgia in the regular season? Or, right. Or you only play Florida in the regular, or why is it certain years, you're trying to get it at home rather than on the road? It's, it's not, there's not a lot of competitive balance in college football.
Yeah, it's it's just not set up for that. So, to complain about competitive, like, get the hell out of here. And actually, the competitive balance is probably going to get worse now. It's going to give these schools that are getting the best players an even bigger advantage. So, and
you could argue that putting the playoff in, you're limiting it to 4 teams, and just the idea that you're going to have a playoff and it's only going to be certain teams. That's kind of less fair to the other teams that aren't, because in years past, it was very arbitrary who won the national championship, but that actually kind of gave you more of an advantage if you were not necessarily in the Power 5, or you were a team that wasn't as highly thought of as some of these other programs. You could maybe sneak in and then win the national championship because it was all based on polls and other stuff. So you could argue that was maybe more fair, there was more competitive balance with that than with the current. You could maybe argue that. I'm not necessarily saying that's true, but I could see how someone could argue that.
Yeah. You look at college football has been basically taken over by the SEC. The only school outside of that, Ohio State's the only school that in another conference or Ohio State and Clemson are the only schools from another conference that can actually compete on your level sometimes when they have the right quarterback. And then the West Coast has been completely, basically eliminated, which is why, USC and UCLA are moving to the Big Ten. So it's become less competitively balanced. Is what I would say is that, at least, in the 80s, you didn't have any system where the best team would play the other best team for the national title. Like, it would be, you're tied to these bowls, and this is the bowl this is the game you're going to go to based on your TV contract, and that's the end of it. So we do get, that is kind of a positive, but yeah, that's it's highly insane, and I can't believe that, I can't wait till a reporter actually calls Nick Saban on some of this stuff. Usually it doesn't happen because all these places he's going are Homerville, USA, Nobody's there to challenge anything he does. If he was pulling this nonsense in a major media market, like, the media would be ripping him a new one. If he was coaching in New York, like, the New York Post would have headlines on how ridiculous he is every day. But because, and a lot of these college football teams are like that. They're small towns where, nobody's going to challenge the head coach because he's running the whole thing.
Because they want the access and, they don't want to piss him off. So it's just, unfortunately. So, it's kind of, it's very easy to find a ridiculous take by, a talking head on TV or on the radio. Because they're just talking all the time. So, of course, they're going to say something stupid. Some people say stupid stuff more often than others, but it is kind of funny when you actually get something that a coach or a player says that it's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like I said, ridiculous take of the year, ridiculous take of the past 10 years.
Yeah. Do you think he really believes any of that he's saying, or do you think this is all he's putting out a message?
That's a complicated question. So on the one hand, I do. On the other hand, I don't. It's weird because okay, it's kind of like this. When you talk to when you either talk to or you hear really successful CEOs or entrepreneurs talk,
right?
They don't really talk like you and I do,
right?
And they'll say stuff, and you're like, "Do you really believe that?" So it's very hard for me to tell where the kind of the line is. Are they kind of putting on a facade? Or do they have an agenda that they're pushing by saying these different things? So I don't know. I could see the argument both ways. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd say no. I think he, on some level, believes what he's saying. Yeah. Because he's so obsessed with winning and control that he either talks himself into it, or it's just his mindset is such a certain way that nothing else can penetrate it. So if any of this kind of stuff happens, his mindset's a certain way, and it's just going to go like that. He's just going to talk about, I don't like this. He's going to get upset about not having control. So I don't know.
I think he doesn't like to change. I think that's part of it. But I also think that with this particular issue, he's been putting out this message over and over again in different ways. So is trying, I think he is trying to get some kind of point across. And it may be as Colin Cowherd says, well, he's trying to get it across to the Alabama boosters, we need more money. And that could be part of it. But I definitely think, when offenses started speeding up, and the spread offense, we're going to go as fast as we possibly can. Nick Saban didn't like that because it meant, all right, well, my defense can't control the game anymore. And then, the offenses in general just started becoming more explosive. And it's like, all right, I can't stop these. So I have to now change, and I can't have Greg McElroy as my quarterback anymore. I need a guy who can score points and throw the ball down the field. So I think, I think that there's definitely a message there. I don't know. Is that gonna change anything? Is that gonna work? Is he gonna get what he wants by putting that out there?
That's one of those things in sports that I always wonder about. Because the media loves to say that this guy's talking to the media and he keeps saying this because he's trying to convince people of something. Maybe things do work that way. It seems a little hokey to me, but maybe it does work that way. But I definitely think there is something to that, what Colin Cowherd's saying, that he's getting a message to the boosters. But at the same time, doesn't he meet with boosters anyway?
Right.
That's
Right.
part of the job of being a college football head coach. So he has to do that in the media. I mean, I guess if you're hearing about it in the media, it's an even bigger deal than him telling you in private. But yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know exactly what the answer is. I can see that he maybe is trying to get a message across, but definitely some of this is ego and like I don't have control of this and I'm pissed off.
He definitely wants us to know. There's no doubt about that.
Yes.
Okay, so jumping off of that point, I've this is going to be kind of this episode is going to kind of be all right. These are things that are bothering us. So that's what we're gonna be. There's gonna be a little complaining going on. So I'm just letting you know. So there was an episode of Ryan Russillo's podcast, Ryan Russillo of The Ringer. It was a week or two ago where he was talking about all of this college football realignment stuff and, teams changing conferences and what's the landscape going to look like. And he goes through this whole thing and his major premise was, I hate it. And and he went through all of the schools like Texas A&M. Are you really happier that you don't get to play Texas anymore and you're in the SEC? Is that really better for you? And Nebraska, are you really better off in the Big Ten? So he goes to all these other fan bases really happy that you're moving to these other conferences, because he wanted, he likes the traditional rivalries and the matchups that you're used to seeing and all of that. And then he has also of The Ringer, and they went back and forth on this. And it's like, oh, it's not going to be the same, and we're not going to get the rivalry games that we get. And so, and I can understand that. I understand if you're used to it being a certain way, and you that's what you like and you want to continue that. Like, I get that. But at the same time, my opinion on that is, we need to make changes for the better. Like, things need to change. Like, Nebraska playing Oklahoma used to be the biggest game of the year. Well, Nebraska's not any good anymore. So why do we need that game? USC, I know people are really disappointed that, USC isn't going to play Oregon anymore. But is that game really, are we really determining anything with that? If you told me, all right, we're not going to get, Ohio State's not going to play Michigan anymore. Like, okay, that would probably suck. If one of those teams moved to a different conference, I'd probably be disappointed because I'm kind of used to that. But at the same time, we just replace it with something else. Like, there's going to be some good college football games. The fact that, this rivalry isn't going to happen. USC is not going to play Arizona State anymore. I mean, most of these things that we're talking about don't really matter. Alabama still plays LSU every year. Florida still plays Florida State every year. Clemson still plays South Carolina. USC is still going to play UCLA. The main rival for every team is still there. And if they're not there, it's usually for a pretty good reason. So my overall take on this is I'm not upset by it. I look forward to there being more good games. That's kind of my general consensus about college football is we need to do things to make the product better and make the product on television better and give me more good games. I realize that is kind of it's a selfish outsider view. I know I'm not thinking about everybody else and the athletes and the schools and all of that stuff. I realize that's kind of where I'm at with it. But anybody who acts like, oh, this is just going to ruin college football, I think that's complete nonsense. Like, I think it's,
I wouldn't necessarily use the word ruin. But, and look, at the end, I'll get in my, I'll talk about this more in my rant. I'm not saying that I completely, absolutely disagree with what you're saying. I see what you're saying. There obviously are some good points with that. A lot of people are making that argument. Although I will say a lot of people making that argument are on ESPN and FS1, which have a vested interest in college football, continuing to make money and continuing to make more money. But again, I'll get into that in my rant. I think that there's something to be said for you know, when I was younger, I think tradition didn't really mean that much. But I think as you get older, you kind of go, because tradition helps connect you to the past, and it kind of creates, whether it's an illusion or not, it creates stability, and it kind of it helps create meaning. And so I think that as more and more decisions seem to be made about these schools need to make more money, and we need better games, so we make more money, and we need to expand the playoffs, so we make more money. There something gets lost, or some things get lost. Anyway, I'll talk about that more in my rant, but I think that's kind of what people like Russillo are kind of pointing out, and I think that it's good that people are out there pointing that out, because I don't think that really gets said, because I think what happens is, while you're saying like USC and Arizona doesn't matter, for some Arizona fans it might matter, for some USC fans it might matter, and they've been playing each other for quite a while now, so it kind of, like I said, it's kind of a tradition, and it gives you it helps connect you to the past, and it gives more meaning to something. So I can see both sides of it. In my rant, I'm kind of leaning more toward the Ryan Russillo side of it, but I can see what you're saying. But it is kind of like, this is where things are going. I'm not naive enough to think that a few people screaming about we're losing tradition, all this stuff is going to change anything. We're moving in the direction you're talking about, but.
Yeah, so look, my first overall take is college football, college basketball, Major League Baseball, the sports that are, not the most popular, but they're kind of underneath the more popular sports. They're not going anywhere. Okay? We will have college football forever. It's not going to go anywhere. It still makes plenty of money. It still, rates well on television. College basketball, the college basketball tournament, we're always going to have that, because it's still going to be there. Maybe it's not going to be as popular as it was in the 90s.
For a variety of reasons.
It's not going to be like it was when guys stayed in school and all that stuff. It's not going to be like that, but it's still going to be here. It's not going anywhere. So this idea that, this is just going to it's not going to ruin it. Now, is it better? I don't know. It's different. I think that I think that the college football system that from 30 years ago has gotten better. Now, is it exactly what I want? No. It's way better than it used to be, but it's not. Yeah. It's not as good as we need. So I think what rivalries? How important are rivalries to you? I guess is my question. Is that? I know it's important to the sport, in some capacity, but how far do we need to go to preserve the rivalries?
See, we're asking that question because in our lifetimes, things have moved in a direction where it's, a lot of stuff is about the money, and then it's about, and if it's not about the money, it's about the biggest thing. It's not so. Like in college football, it's all about getting into the playoff and winning the national championship. So people don't really care as much about winning a conference or winning your rivalry game or whatever. They just want to win the national championship. So I think we're talking about that a certain way, but over our lifetime, things have changed. And it's not just so asking that question, we're asking it from a standpoint of things have already changed, and then, everything's cool. So it's we're kind of assuming that things were just moving in that direction naturally, and it was always going to move in this direction. And it's not necessarily. Things happen for a reason. Things happen because people make decisions, especially with something like this, things happen because people make decisions over multiple decades, and it propels things a certain way. And then we now will think about stuff in a certain way that makes sense now, but 20, 30 years ago, it might not have made sense. So how important are rivalries? Well, it's not that important to me, because I'm a bigger NFL and NBA fan than I am college football. But for some people, I think it is important, and I think when we push things toward, we sort of nationalize it, where it's just the national championship, and then we forget about the different regional things that happen. You know, the SEC football is a certain way in the SEC. It's a certain way in the Midwest with the Big Ten. It's a certain way with the Pac-12 and with the Big 12. You know, or with the ACC. Like it's, you know, we're kind of, when we nationalize everything, it's kind of at the expense of this regional stuff. And I do get that it's become a little bit too regional, maybe, but there's something, and maybe I'm romanticizing it, but there's something, like I said, it's tradition or something. I don't know. It's just maybe it's hard for me to describe it, but it's just something that seems like it means something. So,
yeah, I mean, look, if you know, if we want college football to be more popular, right? To grab more people, then it can't just be regional. You know, we can't just have all the good teams in the South and then that's the end of it. And that's kind of what's happened. So I think, but these moves that they're making, you know, consolidating these good teams into conferences together is a move to make the sport more national. And isn't that what we want? Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, you know, in basketball, right? It becomes a national story when LeBron's in the finals. Isn't that what we want for the sport? Like, isn't that what we want it to be, a national, people talking about it nationally? And there's parts of the country that don't watch college football that much. You know, the Northeast is not really into college football the same way the South is, the same way the Midwest is, you know? And so I think bringing these things together now, the way it's being done, we could argue about that all day. Because it's just a complete mess. It's all over the place. Well, we're doing this and we're going to do, because there's these groups of people that have completely different interests, you know, and you know, they want to do things a completely different way. And so that's the problem. College football is like, it's like we have all these, and this is my overriding thing that I don't understand why college football can't figure this out. There's all of this money involved. Okay, across the United States, through every conference, every team, there's all this money involved. Okay, and when you have competing businesses in the same industry, what generally happens, right? Those businesses consolidate, right, to make the profits better for everybody, right? That's generally that's how business works. Okay, this big company gobbles up this smaller company so they can get their market share, so they can increase their profits. Right? It's capitalist. That's what's going on in college football. So why can't these conferences get their act together and go, all right, guys, look, we're all making a ton of money here. Let's just figure out how we can divide it up in a suitable way that works for however many teams you want to put in there. And then let's make this product better. And it's just that's the biggest issue. No one's looking out for college football. Everybody's out. Oh well, got to make money for ourselves and whatever, and no one's
because you're
in charge of it. No one's there to try to figure it out.
Incredibly regional for decades. I mean, that's kind of the way it was.
Right.
I'll talk about that more in my rant about what you're saying about consolidation. Like, you know, I've got a whole thing on that.
It just seems it's just an obvious business principle, right? Just forget the fact that it's a sport. Forget that. Just look at it as a business. This is not what you would do. You wouldn't have, you know, 5 different businesses, the Power 5 conferences, all going their own direction, and everybody's off doing whatever. And it's like, we're missing the point, you know? So I think expanding the playoff maybe helps this a little bit, but there needs to be, I've been saying this for a while now, there needs to be a constitutional convention for college football. Okay, they need to get everybody in a room and they all need to negotiate this and figure this out, because there's so much money at stake and there's so much more that could be made if they just organize this correctly. So I guess this is just my personality. I'm not beholden to tradition. Like, I think we got to change for the better. And look, like I said, Miami and Florida State used to be the biggest game of the season. It's not anymore. Nebraska, Oklahoma used to those are the two best teams. Some of those, back in the 70s, those were the two best teams we were ever going to see. So I think, we can hold on to a lot of those traditional things, and some of those traditional things are still good, right? Ohio State and Michigan still have good teams.
Yeah.
They still have good teams. They still, that rivalry is still a big deal. So I think some of it can be preserved, but, I don't have a problem with it. I wish that we could figure this out to run the sport better. As I said, it's better than it was, but it's not as good as it needs to be. These things are easy to fix, and it's much easier in a professional league where everybody's under the same umbrella. I get it, but yeah, at some point they've got to. These businesses make way too much money to not try to figure out how to organize this better.
All right.
So anyway, any thoughts?
No, we can kind of, like I said, I'll get into more. I got a rant. I'll get into more of that when I do that.
All right. So this other thing that's annoying me this week. Colin Cowherd's been talking about this for a while, and I think it's a bigger issue than he's making it for a lot of reasons. So he's always saying, well, and the NBA has just a contentious, negative relationship with college basketball. And, he made the argument, especially with NIL now, well, if I get the choice, my kid gets to go to the G League or to college, I'm sending him to college because of the marketing, because Zion went to Duke for a year, and, I know who he is now. And, he goes to the NBA and, he's a big star. And, look how it works with college football. They stay 3 years. We know who they are. And then they get into the league and, they have a big following already. And I've always thought that was a really flawed argument. I mean, number one, for the obvious, in college football, they have this rule that the NFL has that I don't know how they've kept it this long, but you have to be 21 years old or 3 years out of high school to play in the NFL. So just by that rationale, you only have to be 19 to get in the NBA. So just by that rationale, college football's they've got these guys for 3 years. So they've got this time to build up this following or whatever. But I don't think it's the same for college basketball at all, because Zion Williamson played maybe a handful of games that anybody saw. And if he wasn't good in the NBA right away, nobody cares. Like, Ja Morant was, okay, everybody thought, okay, he's going to be a great player in that draft coming up, but nobody was going crazy about him in college, and he's a superstar now. So I don't believe, first of all, I don't know about the relationship between the NBA and college basketball. I do think it's great. It's a great place for people to go. I'm not knocking college basketball. I think it does a lot of things. It's great to play with a team, and you get the coaching in college basketball is really good, especially at the good schools. So I think it's a good tool, especially now since these guys can actually make money. Even if they're not, like, if you're a player and you're not going to be a top 10 pick or something, you can at least, even if you get a decision to make, all right, should I stay in college for another year and at least make a little bit of money, or should I go to the NBA? So I think that, that relationship between NBA and college is obviously changing. And I think there's a bunch of avenues to go. So, I mean, my first question to you is, they're talking about Adam Silver came out last week and is basically saying he thinks we need to not just change the age limit, but get rid of it altogether. And so I think that's a bit of a change from where they were. So what do you think about the age limit in general? And then what do you think about the relationship between the NBA and college basketball?
I mean, you could... Yeah, I mean, I could see the argument for getting rid of it. I would like... I guess the thought that crossed my mind is, how many... Because Colin's worried about... I guess he's concerned that they're going to come into the NBA and not be ready, or they're going to... they're not... He wants them to stay longer so they're more ready to just come in and play. Which I get that, but at the same time... I'm trying to think of what I was going to say here. I get that, but how many kids are like are coming out of college really quickly and then going to the NBA and being a bust, and then their lives are ruined. Like, because at the same time, I'm like,
right.
This is America. You're over the age of 18. Like, if you want to pursue something, you can pursue something, And if, maybe you can go back to college later, so, and then his whole thing, well, you get better coaching. I understand the better coaching thing, and that's probably the best point for going to college. But at the same time, it's just kind of like, well, if you want to get paid to do something and you're over the age of 18 and you can, then you can just sign up with the G League. Like, I don't see what the big, that does seem very, I'm not surprised that an older guy like Colin Cowherd would be promoting college, because I think older people are under the impression that all this learning is going on in college. And by and large, you spend your first 2 years relearning stuff you were supposed to learn in high school, because most people aren't learning enough in high school anymore. And then you spend 2 years on your major, and, you might learn some stuff. It's...
Yeah, and if you're a one-and-done guy, right, you basically go to your class, you have to, get a good enough GPA your first 3 months, and then you don't have to go to class anymore. So this idea that they're going to college and learning stuff is, no, they're going because they're playing basketball. Like, this idea that, that it's better to get an education.
Well, and the other thing that people need to remember
is,
and people constantly forget this, when we're talking, because the NBA draft has 2 rounds, okay? So we're literally talking about, like, what is that, 65 people? Okay, how many college basketball players are there in Division I? A few hundred?
Oh, there's like 300 schools. There's like 300.
Okay, 300 times what? 15. That's like there's over 1,000. Okay, so
a lot of
and
them.
Most of those kids, they're going to have to go. They're probably going to spend most of the time in college if they even get to the NBA. Like, they're either going to graduate or they're going to go for like 2 or 3 years. Then you actually do kind of learn something. So we get all nuts about this, and it's like, look, if you're that good at basketball that you can get drafted, like, go for it, try to make it. If you don't make it, you can figure it out after that. You can go back to college or whatever. So I don't see what the big, Now, if they want to get rid of the age limit, I do kind of think they should get rid of it, because you can have high school kids that can go into the NBA and can make a roster. And I think they should be given that opportunity.
Right.
And then the guys that really want to go to college.
Yeah, look.
Or the guys that aren't good enough, they can go to college and they'll probably be there a few years.
Yeah, look, here's my take on the age limit. I understand what the NFL's doing. They want to make their product.
And especially, they got to make sure you're built
so
enough
like,
and you're physically able to play in the NFL.
Right, but I also think and I think the NBA, honestly, my opinion, I think the NBA should do the same thing. I think the product on the court would be better if everybody was 21 years old. I just do. I think that's, I don't have if it were me, that's what I would do. But I also have a problem with, like, Bryce Young from Alabama. He would have been one of the top 2 or 3 picks in the draft last year, and he's got to go back to college. Like, so I kind of see both sides. I understand if the NFL, from a business standpoint, if that's what they want to do, okay, I get it. I'm not in love with that, but I understand what they're doing, what their motivation is. And I really wouldn't have a problem if the NBA said, all right, you got to be 21. Because I honestly think, especially now, there's not only the G League, right? Some guys were going to Europe. Going to Europe for a year and coming back. There's also this new kind of development thing called Overtime Elite, which is kind of like it's obviously it's not like the G League because there aren't as many teams, but it's basically like a basketball academy type thing. So I think this idea that the NBA doesn't like college basketball, or they can't, that they're like demonizing college. I don't agree with that at all. I think the NBA is like, look, this world we have now, there's more options now. So let's offer these kids more options. Like, when you came out in the 90s, right? It was like, oh my God, what's going to happen, because there was no support system
Yeah.
for these guys at the time. Okay, they're coming in. It's like, all right, figure it out. No, Kobe and Kevin Garnett. Okay, they had whatever it took. They were tough enough or smart enough or whatever, to figure that out. But everybody can't do that. So I support the NBA trying to bridge some kind of gap to help these kids get into the NBA. And
Well, and the other thing is,
properly.
look,
So
people, this is definitely something that we need that older people don't get. Okay, only I think it's something like a third of American adults go to college. Okay, there's plenty of people who don't go to college,
Right.
and they end up being very successful. Okay, can college potentially give you a leg up? Possibly. Possibly. It depends what your major is. It depends what your skills are. But at a certain level, at a certain point, you have to learn how to be an adult. So if someone's 18 and they want to go into the G League, it's like, okay, well, you gotta go there. You gotta do that. You gotta show up on time to practice. You gotta work hard. You gotta try to make an NBA team. You gotta be an adult. And you gotta learn how to do it. Which to me, that's kind of, and it's also like if they go to Europe, well, I mean, it's like study abroad. You got to live in another country. You got to figure out all this stuff. That's kind of what that's kind of like becoming an adult. You got to figure out how to live on your own. So again, this is America. If someone wants to pursue that, they can pursue that. Like, what's the the college thing? It's not, the problem is a lot of these people saying this, they went to college in like the 70s or the 60s or even the early 80s. And it's like, guys, it's totally different now. So,
Right.
And you could also, I mean, look, you could go to college later. You could go online. You could go to night classes or something. Like, you don't have to just take this time out of your life to, I mean, essentially what college is. It's like you graduate from high school, you're an adult, and now you get to take this 4-year sabbatical and you can party and kind of learn and screw around, and then you get to become an adult. It's like, okay.
Yeah, no, and I think the United States is really the only country that I know of
Yeah.
that does it this way, where we combine education and athletics, and it doesn't mix at all. Like, it's so asinine that we think, oh, this is a good idea. Like, if you were starting over again, right, and this is what you were going to do, you would not.
Yeah,
no
no.
one would come up with the system. Because it's not really about, it's not really about education. It's not really about, you're trying to do these two things that they don't mix. They're not conducive to each other at all. They don't enhance one another, number one. And like in Europe, like in soccer and in basketball, like they have these academies where you learn, like if you're going to be a basketball player and you decide that really early, okay. Like, Luka Doncic as an example, moved from Slovenia to Spain when he was 13 so he could play in the Real Madrid academy, right? Worked through that. He wanted to be, I'm going to be a basketball player. Okay. He's 16. He's a professional. And then he's playing in a professional league. Like, why does it have to be that, oh, well, you can't not go to college. Like, in Europe, if you want to pursue your education, go ahead. You want to be an athlete, go ahead and do that. But we're not going to mix the two together and expect you to do both at the same time. So I just think the fact that the NBA is now creating avenues that weren't there before, where it's like, oh, okay, if you're really, this is what you're going to be, a professional basketball player. Well, all right, so go do that. There's no reason for you to, screw around in English class. Like what are you doing? Like, so I think, I have a problem with Colin Cowherd acting like, well, the G League's not a good avenue and it's not blah, blah, blah. No, bullshit. Like Jalen Green played in the G League last year. He's doing great. So it's
Let me just be really
that,
pro-America here, okay? America is about taking risks, okay? Like people that start businesses, that's a huge risk. If you're being smart, people will be like, don't do that. What are you, insane? It's going to fail because most small businesses fail, So people will move. They'll just be like, I'm going to move over here. And it's like, well, I don't have any family there or whatever, but I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take a risk. I'm going to try it out and see what happens, And in America, I mean, you could be really successful, or you could fail and you could do something else. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities here. So, let people be adults when you're 18, you're kind of let people be adults. Let them make decisions. If they fail, they fail, and you can figure it out later.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like I just brought up Jalen Green. Like, okay, let's say he got injured or whatever, didn't make it in the league. He got $500,000 for playing in the.
He went after it.
Okay.
You could say he went after it and he tried it and it didn't work.
Now
okay.
he can go. Yep. Now he can go do whatever else he wants to do, whatever the next thing in his life is. So, I don't think there's anything wrong with kids choosing. And now it's like, look at all these avenues that you have. Like, if you can't get into the G League, well, they got this overtime elite thing. If you can't get into that, you can go to college. If you want to go in the next year in the draft, you can. If not, you want to stay in college and keep making NIL money, you can do that. So there's a million options for them, and they're all actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So, anyway, all right. So we've got. So, do you want to do the draft at the end?
Let's do the draft.
Let's
do that, and then I'll do
at the end. What do you want to? Okay. All right. So, all right. So the idea we came up with this week for the draft was, the top 5 NBA players that you want to build your franchise around. Now, so starting from here on.
Okay.
Okay. So, not talking about legacy or anything you've done in the past. I'm just saying you're starting a franchise today. You're picking a guy to be the cornerstone of your franchise. This is who are you picking? So, I'm going to be generous and give you the first pick.
All right, I'll go with Giannis because he's just. I mean, his game's not perfect because he's not really a great shooter. But in terms of him being physically dominating on both ends, he's obviously got the right attitude. He's great in the locker room. He's great as a teammate. Just great as he always keeps playing. No matter what's going on, he just keeps playing, which is great to have on your team from the best player on your team. So,
yeah, that's. I mean, I think it's pretty much universal. Nick Wright went on Colin's show last week and was like, "Look, this guy's the best guy in the league, and there's not really an argument." Now he likes to say that about everything.
Right,
there's not really an argument. Well,
yeah,
there's an argument. Okay, but I think as far as a two-way guy who just dominates a game and he's still getting better. Like, he's already won the championship, 2 MVPs, and he's still getting better. Like, he was becoming a better playmaker. His shooting's never going to be spectacular, but the guy is such a force. He's the first guy you have to game plan for. And as far as the he could be winning Defensive Player of the Year on the defensive end. So yeah, there's no argument there. So yeah, I kind of did that on purpose because I knew there's only one number 1 pick, and I wanted the number 2 pick so I could pick Luka Doncic. This guy is MVP of the EuroLeague when he was 17. His first 4 years in the NBA have been I think he's first team All NBA two of the years now. So yeah, he's killing it. He's going to be a great player for the next 10 years, and this guy wants to get better. He plays in the, he just played for Slovenia in the summer. Like, this guy is nonstop basketball. And I believe the sky's the limit. I know everybody's going to criticize, well, he's not quite in perfect shape and all that stuff. And it's like, he's 23. Just give it some time. As I've said before on this podcast, he's coming. Like, it's happening. You can deny it. You can criticize it all you want. You just better hope no other great player decides to go play with him, because if they do, they could be ringing up the titles.
All right. Luka's on my list, but I'll put Anthony Edwards second for the Timberwolves. I think he's like. Obviously he's only played in the league 1 year, but I just think in terms of I think he's going to end up being a really great two-way player. And he's a good shooter, and so I just think. And then you watch what he did in the playoffs. It's like he's already doing that his first year in the league. He's going to be really good. Now,
second
I don't think Minnesota's built the right team around him, so that's kind of a problem. But I think if you did, you'd be a pretty damn good team. So I'll go with him number 2.
Yeah, and this is an imaginary franchise, so you don't have to worry about Minnesota managing your. But yeah, no, Anthony Edwards was next on my list. this guy's a stud. He's 6'4". He's built like a linebacker. I mean, just physically, this guy's going to hold up forever. You're not ever going to have to worry about this guy being available. Like, he's just, ridiculous athlete beyond just about everybody in the league. And yeah, he's also got the right attitude. Like, the guy is joyful out there playing the game, and that just, you can't, I can't get enough of him. Like, that guy, I would take that guy any day of the week. All right. So my next pick, I'm going to go maybe against my better judgment, but I'm going to go with Nikola Jokic. This guy is the offensive engine for your team. Now look, he's not, obviously, we just talked about athletes. He's not the athlete that Giannis or Anthony Edwards are, but this guy is scary offensively, and there's not much you can really do to stop him. Like, there's not really there's not really very many big guys that can do much to him, anyway. And besides, then he just pulls them out to the 3-point line, and he can make threes, and he just makes your whole team go. And when he's got, the guys around him, but to me, this guy's the starting block. Like, you start with this, like, you've got what you need for the next, 8 to 10 years, and he's already won.
I'll go with Jokic as number 3. My third pick.
No. It's a draft. You can't pick Jokic. I just took him.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. It's the draft. Shit. All right. You already took Luka. All right. So I picked Giannis and then Anthony Edwards. All right. Scotty Barnes for Toronto.
Wow. Scotty Barnes, really?
I don't know who I'm going to draft after that, because I can't draft Luka and I can't draft Jokic. Well, I'm kind of like,
I'll give you some names. Yeah, Scotty Barnes is you want to talk about a freak. That guy's got like a 10-foot wingspan. Like, it's crazy with his long arms, and he's already, as a rookie, like, can score pretty well, and on defense, he's like Kawhi with longer arms. It's, he's a freak. So yeah, that was a good pick. I don't know that I wasn't even thinking about that. But that's a great idea. Hopefully he doesn't get traded for Durant and he can just stay in Toronto, because they have a nice thing going there. But yeah, I really like.
Wait, I got one more name I can think of. I got to think of a fifth one. Okay.
All right. So next for me, can't believe he's still on the board. Okay. John Morant. He's this guy, came out this. I mean, I see MVP level season in this guy's future. He's a spectacular athlete. You can see he's the go-to scorer, regardless of what Colin Cowherd says. He's way better than Derrick Rose. Don't give me the Derrick Rose nonsense. The guy's an actual point guard. He can actually make guys better, and he's unstoppable driving to the basket. And especially in today's game where you can't really stay in front of anybody, this guy's going to be, and he's already got, the whole team behind him in Memphis. Obviously he was injured in the playoffs, and the size thing, that's a consideration. Like, yeah, he might get a little banged up, but to me, point guard skills never go away. Chris Paul's not the greatest athlete at all, but he still has a tremendous impact on the game. If you know how to play point guard, you're going to have a big impact. So yeah, right. Ja's got a bright future.
I'll go with Jason Tatum. Which there's some flaws there, but I mean, he's a good shooter. He can get to the basket. I think he's been getting better as getting assists to people and helping facilitate the offense. He can be a really good defensive player. I think you need some specific stuff around him, because he may not have that, like. And I hate people say he doesn't have that killer instinct or whatever. I think that gets a little overplayed. But, I mean, that's why he's in a good situation in Boston, because I feel like Jaylen Brown's kind of like that, and then you have Marcus Smart and you have some other guys. So I think in the right situation, you can build a really good team around Jason Tatum.
Yeah, I'm down with that. The guy's got really still has an incredibly high ceiling. He made the finals, and he's still not still had some games where it was like, wow, where is this guy? So yeah, he's really got a bright future. This is my next pick is a bit of a risk, but the talent to me makes it worth it. And Zion Williamson, he's already shown. I mean, this guy could average 30 points in the NBA. If he can stay healthy for any length of time, the guy's basically unstoppable. Like, you can't, his athleticism and size, he's basically unguardable. And yeah, it is a bit of a risk that he can stay healthy, because so far that hasn't been the case. But I think talent wise, this guy at this point in the draft is totally worth the risk. So yeah, I'm going Zion.
Who are the young players on the Cavs right now? Because
they have Evan Mobley and Darius Garland.
Is one of them a point guard? I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, Darius Garland.
All right, I'll go with him
point guard,
because I can't. I'm drawing a blank trying to find anybody else. But I mean, they were pretty good this year, and obviously, I think the Cavs will keep getting better. So, I'll take the point guard.
Yeah, I like Garland a lot. I think he's got real talent. I think I like Evan Mobley too. I don't know if he's going to be, if he's my best player. I just think there's a ceiling
right.
on how far you can go. So, man, this is a tough one. Yeah, I don't know. This might be a little bit of a reach, but I like the guy, even though people seem to be down on him right now. And that's Donovan Mitchell. I think, maybe, you're probably not winning the championship if he's your best player. Maybe not. But I think the guy has been electric the first 3 years in the NBA. He's shown he can be the number one scorer on a really high level team. And the way he played against the Clippers in the playoffs last year, I think was fantastic. Yeah, he didn't play a whole lot of defense this year in the playoffs, but I think that Utah situation is just a mess. So I think, especially if he gets to another situation, I feel pretty good about it. So yeah, Donovan Mitchell. So wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's your 5, and I picked my 5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, that's it. So we got Giannis, Luka, Anthony Edwards, Nikola Jokic, Scotty Barnes, Ja Morant, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, Darius Garland, and Donovan Mitchell. So that's our top 10. I mean, I written down, I wrote down Damian Lillard, even though I know Lillard's older. But
that, like him, Kevin Durant, it's like Steph Curry,
Yeah. Yeah, I just think Lillard's skill set is going to be good for a while. Devin Booker, Brandon Ingram, Trae Young, Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Those are the only other ones I had. I'm not, I know, like you pick Scotty Barnes, but I have a hard time picking anybody that's a rookie right now.
Yeah, it's a projection. I didn't want to pick anyone that was too old. So, and plus you already took Luka and you took Jokic off the board, so had to come up with something.
Yeah. So, all right. So I guess we're gonna try to make this not only the draft but a running segment where we do a rant at the end about a particular topic. So, all right. So you want me to go first? Or you want to go first?
No, I'll go after you.
Okay. So, all right. So, this may be an unpopular take, but I felt this way for a few years now, and I think it's fairly clear. I think Tiger Woods is incredibly boring. And, now listen, on the course, obviously, we're talking about one of the greatest golfers of all time. I'm not disputing that, okay? Anybody in a sport that goes out there and kicks everybody's ass is inherently interesting. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying, well, Tiger, you need to be more interesting. No, Tiger should just be whoever Tiger wants to be. That's fine. What I am saying, though, is could the media stop trying to tell me how fascinating a person he is? Because he really isn't. Okay. First of all, on the course, he's won one major since 2009.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be Skip Bayless here, but other than one weekend at the Masters in 2019, he's been fairly irrelevant in the sport.
Yeah.
So there's that, but he still is relatively interesting on the course. So look, and Tiger Woods has been this way his whole career. He's basically that's how he's been characterized. He's a robot. The guy never makes mistakes. He never never has controversy.
Well,
the thing that exactly. But the only thing that's made him interesting in 25 years is his wife finding out he was cheating on him and going after him with a golf club. Okay? That short period of time, I think it was, probably about a year or so, where it's like, oh, this is going on. But did Tiger ever talk about it?
Yeah,
No. Didn't hear a thing. Not a word. So there's a limit on how interesting that can be. After a certain amount of time, it's like, okay, I really don't care about hearing from all of these women that he apparently slept with. Like, there's a limit to how interesting that is. So the only thing that's interesting about Tiger Woods is when he's at his worst.
Well, I mean,
okay, which is pretty well. Yeah. No, listen, I'm not saying it wasn't interesting. I'm just saying it's like we've got that scandal, and then he gets a DUI.
Yeah,
and he gets in a car accident. Like, these are the most exciting things about a guy who's supposed to be one of the best athletes in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think John Daly is actually more interesting than Tiger. I know he's not anywhere near as good of a golfer, but the guy is a train wreck every week. Like, he's been married several times. The guy is like an episode of one of these reality
on the course,
shows.
He's drinking Diet Cokes. He's smoking cigarettes. He's eating peanut M&Ms. He's he's partying after every round.
Even his look. He's got the mullet with the big beard and whatever. Like, even his look is more interesting than Tiger.
You know what he is? He's Tin Cup, but without the part of the movie where he he just focuses on golf and becomes a really good golfer. Like, no, he's Tin Cup. He's just that type of.
So it's like, and then I said this a while back, like, Tiger played this golf tournament, where he played with his son, and everybody's like, oh, it's amazing, blah, blah, blah. And it's great. I don't really want to watch it. Like, it's not fantastically entertaining. Yeah. It's cute.
It's
but,
cute.
if Tiger Woods wasn't really good at golf, no one would care anyway. So I'm tired of the media telling me how fascinating this guy is when he's not. I don't think he's done an interesting thing in his entire life. Well, other than be a train wreck, So, they have a documentary on HBO about Tiger, right? Tiger does an interview for it. They don't get one interview or quote from Tiger for this entire documentary. Okay? It lays out his whole career, good and bad. Okay? No, doesn't want to be a part of it. Okay? So it's just like, I'm glad, and I'm glad that now, Tiger gets to come out of his shell a little bit, and he's it seems like he's focused on the right things now. He's focused on his kids and what he has to do. And I think as a golfer now, I looked it up today. Jack Nicklaus kept playing in the majors until he was 65. I don't think there's any way Tiger's going to be able to do that, because first of all, just physically, I don't know how he's going to play 5 more years, let alone 20. So I think at this point, when he left, finished his round, he didn't make the cut at the British Open, and he finished his round, and he was, crying at the end, and, and I was like, wow, what's going on? And he basically said, look, I don't know if I'm, if this comes back to St. Andrews, I don't know if I'm going to be able to play. So I think at this point, we can just say it. Tiger Woods is a ceremonial golfer at this point. He's going to play in the majors because that's about all he can physically do. And he's not going to be competitive in them, but he'll be out there and he'll wave to the crowd and everybody will be excited to see him and all that stuff. But that's basically what he is. But as far as being an interesting person or athlete, like, he doesn't do that much for me. I've always been way more interested in Phil, because Phil has a tendency to just say shit and shoot his mouth off and, do dumb stuff. And it's just, Tiger's too worried about letting anybody else in or anybody seeing anything, And plus, and the good part is he's a golfer, so it's not like, oh, we have this avenue, or he has very rare media availabilities. If he wants to not see anybody, he can just disappear and we never see him. So anyway, yeah, I know that's, again, not going to be the most popular take, but off the course, Tiger's pretty lame.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have to completely agree with that. So, all right. Here, I'll do my rant. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but it was about college football. I was kind of holding back. I didn't want to give everything away. Got my notes written down here. Let's see. The changes in college football are a microcosm of the changes in the American economy and American culture. It seems like every major change that's made or even contemplated is all about the money, both in college football and our society. Why are Oklahoma and Texas moving to the SEC? Why are USC and UCLA moving to the Big Ten? Follow the money. In 2021, the Longhorns and the Sooners received about $34 million from the Big 12 Conference. When they move to the SEC, they're projected to receive about $60 million per year. In 2020, the Pac-12 distributed about $33.6 million to each member school, while the Big Ten paid an average of $49.2 million to each member school. Why do we have a college football playoff? Why is it eventually going to expand to 8, 10, or 12 teams? I think you know the answer. Now, I'm not saying there's anything inherently wrong with making money. I'm a capitalist. Capitalism's nearly eliminated extreme poverty in the industrialized world, and it's helping third world countries rapidly move out of poverty. Capitalism has also dramatically improved our standards of living. I mean, think about it this way. The people who rip capitalism are often doing so on Twitter, which is an app you can access on a smartphone, which is a remarkable piece of technology that allows anyone to walk around and access all the accumulated knowledge of human history. And smartphones are not cheap. Now, I'm not saying capitalism is perfect, but that's another topic for another day. Now, while there's nothing wrong with making money, there's certainly something wrong with seemingly everything in college football in our society being about money and the pursuit of more of it. It's not only the pursuit of money I have a problem with, it's the constant pursuit of the next best thing and never being satisfied when something is already good enough. Something's been lost. Everything in college football is all about making more money and winning the national championship. What about winning your conference? Winning your rivalry games? Winning a bowl game? Finishing the season ranked in the top 10 of the top 25? Did you enjoy college football in the 90s? Did you enjoy it in the 2000s? Did you enjoy it in the 2010s? Of course you did. BCS or no BCS? College football playoff or no college football playoff? Be honest. You liked all the arguing. That's a big part of what makes college football fun. What's wrong with the Big Ten teams playing a certain way? What's wrong with having a variety of conferences? The Big 12 teams don't really play defense, but their offenses put up a ton of points. Sometimes change actually isn't good, no matter what the talking heads like Colin Cowherd and other people on ESPN or FS1 say. And never forget, both those networks have a vested interest in college football continuing to pursue more and more money. Tradition be damned. What's the next part? Think about some of the changes we've seen in society and what those changes have taken away. Amazon is certainly convenient. In fact, it's extremely convenient. With Amazon, every day seems like Christmas because there's always a package outside your door. But how do you think Amazon ships things so quickly? It's pretty simple. They treat their warehouse workers like dog shit, and they hardly pay any taxes. All this convenience is making it absolutely impossible for small businesses to compete. We all lose when it becomes harder for them to compete because there's less competition. Less competition eventually means fewer options, higher prices, poor customer service, and a whole range of other problems. It also means the rich not only get richer, but obscenely richer. If you think consolidation is okay or just the way it is, remember that it was not always this way. Decisions have been made over multiple decades, both at the administrative level and in our culture, that have created the systems that are now in place, both in college football and in our society. In our society, the Supreme Court and the legislative branch have basically allowed monopolies to pervade nearly every sector of the economy. Our government has been protecting corporate interests for decades while the rest of us watch housing prices and the price of college skyrocket. Even before the massive inflation that we've been seeing in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, everything had already been more expensive. Wage growth has been stagnant for decades. Healthcare costs are completely out of control. In college football, we've allowed ourselves to buy into the narrative pushed by the media that it is all about the national championship. Never mind the fact that they're only saying that because it serves their interests. They need the clicks, they need the ratings. They get ratings and clicks by pissing you off. They don't care about the future of college football. This idea that everything is all about the end of the season is toxic. Think about it in the context of living a happy life. If you make your life about the journey and not the destination, you'll usually be happier. The journey towards something lasts a lot longer than the enjoyment of achieving something. You have to enjoy the journey. But it seems like now we're being told we cannot enjoy the journey. Everything is about the destination. This is a recipe for unhappiness, and with college football, it's a recipe for less enjoyment of a sport we have loved for decades. That's my rant. Went on a little bit long, I apologize.
Wow. Well done, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, no, I sounded like Bob Costas.
Listen, you only get that kind of journalistic talent here on the Don't Be Ridiculous podcast. Man, Clark, bringing the knowledge. Yeah. So, okay. So, do you think? So you don't think it's a good idea to consolidate the conferences and?
Generally, no. Like I said, it's going that way, and it'll still be good. It'll still be fun, But I do think that, like I said, I think some things get lost, and I think we're kind of going, oh, it'll be okay. We'll just get used to this other thing, and it's like, I guess, but everything has pros and cons, I guess.
And I think it's kind of interesting. Like the problem with college football when we grew up always was the end of the season. Right? It's a mess. Well, they didn't get the right two teams, or there's not a good way to pick the two teams, or whatever. And now it's like, okay, like I said earlier, like this is better, right, than it was, but we're still not anywhere where we're not even close to where we need to be. And by the way, no playoff system is perfect. I'm not saying that there's a perfect way to do it. There isn't. I'm just saying we can do better than this. I totally agree with you. We've basically said, all right, you got to win the national championship or you suck. And that's true in every sport, by the way. That's how it is in even the professional ones. And that's one of the things that bothers me. Like it's not a right to win the national championship every year. Like if you're fortunate enough to do it, great. But we've gotten into all of this trouble because we have just decided, well, that's all that matters. Now, listen, in college football, they don't really care who wins the championship. They just care about they're going to make a bunch of money off of it. So I get I get what you're saying. They're doing this all for money. And the thing is, what bothers me is that this could be done where you can make a lot of money and the product could be good. I'm not saying everybody would be happy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you could do this in a way that serves all of these interests, and it's like, I get USC going, you know what? We're tired of funding all these other Pac-12 schools, but we're making the money for the whole conference, enough of this. I understand that, cause it's not USC's fault that all the other schools are not at their level.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping
Well, and I'll say this: maybe we'll see how it goes with like the Big 12 and the Pac-12 and what ends up happening. Maybe things will shake out in a way that's kind of cool. Maybe there'll be these different conferences, but you'll still maintain some of those rivalries, and it'll be interesting. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think if you took the Big 12 and the Pac-12 or the best schools in those and combined them and you'd have a really good conference. No, it's not going to be the SEC or the Big Ten, but so what? Yeah. There's every conference can't be, at that level. So I think there's a way that this can be figured out. What upsets me the most is that they could all sit down and just do this. All these conferences could just sit down and work this out, and they would.
Right.
And so it's really, that's the part that sucks. It's like they have what could be an unbelievable product, and they're just like, it's fine. So it's like they're taking money in the short term instead of thinking down the road and thinking, oh, we could make so much more money if we did this, So, all right. Anything else?
That's good.
All right, that's it for today, folks. Listen, try to be more interesting than Tiger Woods out there, okay?
Not that hard.
All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Episode 43 in the books.